Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Redefine Your Life. Today, I am going to be talking about how to navigate life when it throws a curveball your way, stress from the everyday to, the existential dread that we feel sometimes, and just how to navigate some of the more frustrating and overwhelming feelings that I think have been more common than not, at least for me in the past year, and seem to be something that I struggle with on a day to day basis. So, we're going to dive right into today's episode. I am actually here by myself. It's just me today with a little story. So, today is actually the day that the episode should have been released. And it's kind of a little late if you consider our soft deadlines that we had for when we want to release episodes every Friday. And part of the reason of this delay is that things didn't really go as planned during the week when we try to record. Sometimes curveballs happen. And this week, my lovely co host Faith actually happened to get sick. And this sounds like it needs a little adjustment. There we go. And we were not able to record like we normally do. We have been actually not even able to speak because she's been so down for the count. So that threw a giant wrench in the plan. And then from there, when you have things hit the fan, how do you make up for it? Then of course there's the rest of the week trying to plan everything itself. And that was her curveball of why things kind of didn't happen the way that we wanted them to today. But for me, actually, today, before I went to record this, so I wanted to talk about how that kind of had affected our week, but I had a more pertinent and I guess a way more energetic, wrench thrown in my plan today when I finished working out and I was watering some of the plants that are in the room here. And when I finished, I kind of had moved some things around. So I thought I saw some dirt on the floor. So I went to pick it up and I realized it was a bug, big bug. I actually still have it because it traumatized me so much. I had to trap it. And yeah, so that's fine. It's trapped. I love animals, I do, but bugs creep me out. And this guy just totally ruined my whole morning as far as like, if you would have seen the morning that I had and how overwhelmed I got, you would have thought I was having the worst day of my life. And it felt like it for a moment that it was the worst day ever. And part of why that I think happened was I had a fear of bugs being in my area. And last year around this time, I actually had been living in an apartment and my kitty, my cat who I brought with me, had gotten like an infestation on her. She had fleas on her and I had to take care of, I had to get the whole apartment exterminated. It was like this whole mess. And from that moment, I've always had in the back of my mind this little fear about bugs like infesting me or my pet or something like that. So since then, I've been super proactive. I've been giving her treatments and stuff. And like I take her outside all the time. If you know me and her, I take her outside. So being preventative was my way of like helping my anxiety. Well, when I saw that bug, even though it was way bigger than a flea could be, because my fear had kind of made it to be that immediately I was like, this is a flea, even though it kind of looked like it. But as soon as I saw it, that's where my mind went. I was afraid of what this was going to happen. And as soon as I got that little bit of validation of my fear, it just overwhelmed exponentially. I was like, hyperventilate. I'm like, oh my God. I like grabbed my phone. I like grabbed the flashlight. I'm like looking at this thing, like, what is this? I like had a freaking meltdown. I called my mom crying and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And 0 to 100 so quickly. I was fine. I had literally just finished my workout. Was feeling great mentally. I was like, oh, wow, like that was great. I can't wait to jump in the shower. Let me water my plants, like la di da, here's my day. Boom. Anxiety through the roof, stress through the roof, to the point where I felt so overwhelmed. I just started crying. That's my defense mechanism. When I'm overwhelmed, I cry. And I'm just sitting there feeling so defeated. And I called my mom and she's like, well, like that voice of reason for me. well, here's what you got to do, and go and do it. And I'm just like debilitated by my stress and this overwhelm. And I'm just crying. And she's like, well, nothing's going to come from you crying, but understand that I understand why you're upset. Bugs creep me out. She soothed me. She helped me calm myself in my emotional state so that I could become a more logical, grounded state to then take action towards the thing that I felt like I had to deal with, right? This, at one moment, I was a normal level, maybe even like a minimal level of stress. It's in the back of my mind thinking about this thing, this bug, this critter, whatever, the stress. And then as soon as it was in the forefront, it was like it went from this okay level of stress to an overwhelming, I can't deal with it amount of stress. And she kind of brought me back to that middle ground where, although I was still extremely stressed out, I wanted to cry and burn the whole house down type of stress, to a normal level of, okay, yeah, I'm really creeped out, but this bug's not hurting me. He's not even moving. It looks half dead. It really did. It looked half dead before I started spraying it with my aromatherapy peppermint essential oil bug spray because, I don't like to use chemicals, but I'm like spraying this thing, like, it's not going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt I'm like grabbing Taryn, like moving my cat out of the way. Like, oh my God, it's going to hurt my animal somehow. And Rampage sprayed my entire house only to call my vet and be like, hey, just want to be safe. Is this a bug? And she's like, that's not a flea. That's a beetle. That's a beetle. And this is the point in time where I kind of started laughing. And I'm laughing because of how ridiculous it was that I jumped to this conclusion and made this irrational conclusion because of my fear that this was the thing that my worst fear had just come true, and then there was nothing logically that could talk me out of my fear being true. Like even my mother being like, you're fine. I was still so anxious and so ready to burn the house down and so just distraught from this, overwhelmed. And she was a voice of reason that brought me to okay, let's call the vet. And then I sent them pictures and they were like, that's definitely not it. Like, it's okay. Like, this is not it. Like, I was like, okay, well, I may or may not have already sprayed my entire house with like essential oil, like bug spray, basically. And they're like, that's okay, but you don't need to do that, and I'm laughing because of how ridiculous I was. And then I had a moment where the irony was what was killing me. Me and my friend had just talked about how inconvenient and this one curveball threw off her entire week. And it took her longer to recover from the curveball because of the anxiety and the spike and the frustration and everything that happened and followed from that anxiety response. It took longer to actually like deal with the after effects of that than the actual problem, like the bug. If I would have just taken the bug and killed the bug, maybe taken a picture, make sure it's not what I thought it was, and did what my mom said, flush it down the toilet and forget about it, my anxiety from that point might have been a little bit more manageable if I would have caught it before it became this tornado, this storm in my mind where my mind had conjured the absolute worst, where I was even to the point where I was feeling like I was beating myself up internally about being a bad cat mom because I had let an infestation like this get so bad that these bugs were this big and they were on my animal. That's how much my anxiety was like, you're a shit person, you're a shit cat mom, you don't even take care of your animal. And meanwhile, I'm like crying, feeling this, all these feelings like, oh my gosh, I'm this, and my brain is telling me these things, right? And my cat's looking at me like, why are you crying? Like, human, what's going on? Like, you're freaking out, what's going on? And she's just sitting there like just licking her paws, just like as content as could be. I'm like, she's probably been so uncomfortable. Like, she's probably been like scared and bit and blah, blah, and all these different things. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, but she's fine. She's fine right now. She's not being bit. Like, all of that stuff was up here. All of it was up here. None of it was real, you know? And the fact that my mind felt like it was so, I'm still kind of shaking from like the little bit of anxiety just telling the story because it really chilled me to the bone with those feelings. And I think I bring this up because it happens to me more often than I'd like to admit, that something so small will just create this storm in my head and will just cause this domino effect of just my stress to go from like a manageable level, almost like a productive level, to an unmanageable frustration, overwhelm that is debilitating and leads to this crisis. So it's almost as if the fear in my mind created a false crisis in that moment, and my body reacted to the crisis in my mind, getting overworked, and it became back and forth between my body and my mind getting stressed out. And also why I wanted to bring this up is because I feel like even the voice of reason, my mother telling me this is going to be okay, the vet telling me it's going to be okay, the one thing that actually kind of like allowed for me to fully be like giggle about it was like the giggle was like the oh my gosh, this is ridiculous, I'm overreacting, like wow, how crazy. And as soon as that moment happened, that giggle, and that I started to turn it around in my head. Mind you, I'm still crying. I was still crying at this point in time when I had this moment, this realization of this was a conjuring of my mind making this situation into something way worse than what it was. And I think a lot of times when our mind goes on that thought train, sometimes even if someone else, a logical voice, tells you it's okay or it's whatever, you need to come to that conclusion yourself. And you need to, at least I did, I sat with it and I was alone. And I was actually grateful that I was alone after I talked to them, after I talked to my mom, after I talked to the veterinarian, all these people that helped me calm me down. I felt good being alone because I was able to then work through that in my mind and work through where it is that my stress went from a productive level. Hey, this bug is in your house. You should get rid of it. That's kind of stressful. Like, ew, get rid of that, or whatever it is in your life that causes you to have those little bits of stress. Stress is good motivation sometimes, but when our minds take hold of it and make it into a monster, it's scary and it's debilitating and it's the opposite of productive, right? And that's when we tend to victim, I think, ourselves too. I was definitely in a victim mindset of, oh my God, why did this happen to me? When I went to that apartment, it was all those shitty people. The landlord was crappy. And I was blaming other people, and really the amount of stress that I had and the overwhelm that I had in that moment was because of allowing for it to be, my mind, allowing for my mind to, and the fear in my mind, the fear to take a normal situation and make it into a crisis. And laughter is definitely one of those things that brought me back. I know we talked about in our last episode, Faith and I talked about like the funk and like feeling in the void, and like that feeling is more of like a stuck feeling, and like that it is like an overwhelming frustration feeling. I think it's kind of relatable, but I think when we were talking about that last episode was more of like feeling almost so uncomfortable, I guess, in your own um situation, in your own surrounding, your own environment, and like how to get out of that and like find like a happy place. And I think this is also kind of in that same zone of stress is uncomfortable, but a certain amount of stress can help us be productive, and emotions can be overwhelming, but they're also to teach us something. And I felt like I was afraid of more than just the bugs. I have an insecurity about being a bad cat mom because I've never been a cat mom before. She's my first cat. She's my first, pet that I have, that she's mine and she's my sole responsibility. So I think other anxieties of mine came to the surface with that other trigger. So I kind of had to pull it back once I realized I was overwhelmed for a reason. The reason I was so overwhelmed by all of those things wasn't just because it was a bug. It was because I had this residual fear and anxiety and all these other different emotions about my animal, about my living situation, all those different things were below the surface festering. And when I saw that one thing, that thing that triggered me, pushed me over the edge and became all of a sudden too much. It was really just pushing me over the edge of all those other little micro fears and micro things that I worry about and stress about. And those micro worries can then manifest into a crisis. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is like, if we come back and can look at those different micro fears, and like when we have moments of this where we have so much overwhelm, instead of feeling like I'm glad kind of now that I had that moment. I'm glad that I, even though it was overwhelming and it led to me crying and feeling like I was having the worst day of my life, at the end of that, and when I finally came back down to a normal energetic level, and when I say normal, I mean like a more stable energetic level, a more stable emotional status, I was able to process why that thing, the bug, that thing that made me, triggered me and pushed me over the edge, and look at all the different little things, the different little worries, and sit with them. So like, am I a bad cat mom? No. Like, this does not make me a bad mom, and maybe real moms might have a situation like this, feeling like their kid gets hurt maybe, and then all of a sudden they feel like I'm the worst mom ever, but their kid falling down a step or doing something that they maybe could have prevented felt like this overwhelming, I have to cry about this, but maybe there's something under the surface. There's some more to uncover that we're worried or we're subconsciously really stressed about, and maybe don't need to be. Looking at her, I'm like petting her and I'm like, I'm not a bad mom. Like, she loves me and she's safe. She has a good home. Like, she's fine. Like, all of those stresses were in my head, and I'm going to choose to focus on each of those different things to realize, to focus on them, to realize that it's not what my mind, the stress and the worry of my mind, those are not real. Those are stresses and worries. And like, I guess I don't want to say like they're not real. Like, worries and stuff are real, but it's not something that I should be giving weight to and focusing on. Worry, I guess, is just another emotion like everything else. If we linger on it and we focus on it, we're only going to attract more of it into our lives. It just made me think of the Bob Marley song, Don't Worry. I feel like that song is kind of relevant here though, because it's like, don't worry about a thing because it's going to be fine. And if you worry, you can make it double, That's funny. That's a great song. But yeah, so when you're having those stresses and you're having those overwhelming moments, and life throws you a curveball, and that curveball hits something that maybe a normal pitch you would have been ready for, a normal stressful situation you might have been ready for, but it's a curveball. It's something you didn't expect, and it triggered something you didn't expect. Then that might be a sign to maybe take a moment and have that cry, first of all, because that's also what I felt like I needed, was to be alone for a moment, to just cry and let go of the stress and all of the frustration and all of the lack of control, and just letting go to, I just lost my train of thought. Damn. When life throws you the curveball, I guess, I don't, letting go with the cry, it was letting go of all of those other feelings, the helplessness feeling. I think when we get into a point where we're so stressed out that we feel like overwhelmed and we feel helpless. And I think that's what I was feeling in that moment, was I've done everything I can to be a good mom. And then I felt like a failure still. I felt hopeless still. And just realizing that with that cry, I was crying because that's what I felt like. And what I was letting go with the cry was that was not the truth. I was crying because I felt like a bad mom. With the tears, I'm not going to cry. I was letting go of that being true. I'm not a bad mom, right? So those types of things boil over. I think we have overwhelm. so that we can release it, so that we can cry, or so that we can do any, whether it's through a cry. I think cry is the most powerful way, maybe exercise or talk therapy or journaling, or there's lots of different ways you can let go of things. But I personally think a cry is the best way because it's through the emotional and the physical and the mental body all in one, focusing on letting something go. And then when you add into it this little bit that I'm saying about mentally knowing that you're releasing with those tears, the fact that that insecurity and that fear, that worry, that thing that your brain has conjured that doesn't actually exist is not true. That feeling is not true. And from there, you might be like me after you release, and you might giggle a little bit at the irony of talking about a curveball and then coming home and witnessing literally that, witnessing a curveball happening in your immediate life. And then being that it was unexpected, I definitely navigated it authentically. And I shared with you how I navigated that, but it definitely felt like something I needed. And I wanted to share that because I felt like somebody else might need to hear this. And that little snippet might be that little snippet about at the end about the cry being the releasing, and with the releasing that thing that you have create the crisis that you have created, letting go of that crisis, that it is not real. I mean, it can even be equated to like financial. If I felt like I was in a financial crisis, and although my finances are not looking good, I have this residual amount of stress all the time about finances. And I'm sure we can all relate to that, right? And as the level of stress gets bigger, I have to realize, is the level of stress that I feel actually comparable to the amount of stress that I'm currently experiencing, right? Like currently in my financial situation, I should be stressed because we all need to make money, and the amount that I'm spending is more than I'm depleting, right? Like it's not looking in that number that we need to be. But what I'm realizing is that we create a stress around a number because of money. I'm saying because money makes us feel safe. Like if we have this X amount, that makes us feel safe. But I'm realizing that the way that I'm thinking about that number is what's causing me stress. So what I'm trying to say here is with like finances, I'm trying to figure out like, what am I actually stressed about? I'm stressed that I'm not going to be able to feed myself, or I'm not going to be able to afford the life that I'm trying to live, right? And then I check that. Is that true? Can I not afford the life that I'm living? No, it's not true. That's a lie I've told myself. So why am I letting it stress me out? Because there's other things in my life that trigger on a day-to-day basis, aka every time I spend money or think about money or do anything related to money, it triggers that little bit of stress that I have, and it makes that little bit bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until I'm like, Julia, you've created a monster again. This monster is this big. The amount of stress that you should be feeling about this is stress, but it's like this much stress. It's not immediately going to hurt you. And there might be times in your life where you feel like that stress is at this 10, at this extreme crisis mode. And what I'm trying to say is when you get to the crisis mode, take a moment and just realize like, is this crisis? Is this an actual crisis? Or is this something my mind has conjured to be a crisis, has made into a crisis? And even though it's weird to then be like, yes, this is something that I've conjured or whatever, you then have to kind of distract yourself from it, because if you continue to focus on it, it's going to build the stress again. So it's like a check and balance, I guess. Like think of yourself, check yourself, how much stress, balance it back out, leave it there, leave it alone, continue on with your life, and then realize once it gets to a high point again, okay, I need to check my stress again, or I need to check my this again, and make sure, bring it back down, your stress or anxiety or whatever it is, bring it back down to what the level should be. And I mean, that's something that sounds so simple. I'm like looking at myself like this sounds so simple, and I did it today, but I'm not sure. This might be something that I'm going to have to work on getting better at. I know I'm triggered all the time. I know I have issues with getting overworked and over anxious and frustration and anxiety. I mean, we all do, right? We all have issues. We all have shit that we're dealing with. Really, it's not even issues, it's just shit. There's just a never ending amount of shit and stress in life because life is 24/7. It keeps going 24/7, even when we're sleeping. So to think that this stress level is ever going to stay down there is like crazy of me. Of course, I need to check it and balance it like every damn day, every hour of every damn day, because life every hour of every damn day is triggering me to be more stressful until you're in an environment where you're like on vacation. And even when you're on vacation, have you ever been on vacation and been stressed? Arguably, I've been on vacation sometimes and been more stressed while on vacation than working. Because at least when I'm working, I'm distracted and I'm not thinking about the money that I should be making or whatever. And sure, you could argue if I'm working that I'm not thinking about, I'm not stressed about money because I'm making money. Well, that's not the point. You'd be stressed about other things. When I was working, I'd be stressed about my patients. So there's always going to be something to be stressed about. It's always what's in the forefront of your mind is what you're going to focus on. So, although it's important to listen to your stress and let it teach us what we feel, what fears we have, and help it, like have it help motivate us and have it help keep us. I mean, it teaches me what I'm passionate about. I know I'm passionate about being a good cat mom because I was crying about thinking that there was a bug on my pet. So it's like very clearly like there's reasons for all of these different things. And I think it's, as much as I'd like to say I don't want stress, I think it's important to have stress and to have these different things like that because they motivate us, like these different I feel like stress is a great motivator, and we talk about it in nursing school, even school, like the bell curve of stress. There's like the good level, the lazy level, I'm not really stressed, the productive level up here where it's like, yeah, I'm a good amount of stress, and then there's the debilitating level down here when you get to be too much stress and the productivity goes down. This side's productivity, this side stress. As stress increases, you're more productive until stress is too much, and then it plummets, and then your productivity plummets. So just understanding that this little bit might help you bring that level of stress to the point in the bell curve that is productive for you and enables you to do things and motivates you to do things and get you excited about things. Like I was kind of stressed about this episode and talking about this and being vulnerable, but it motivated me to get on here and do it. And because I knew I was kind of nervous about it, that's how I also know I'm passionate about it, because I want it to be good and helpful for you guys and stuff like that. So I think that's about all I want to share today as far as my personal life nonsense and the amount of stress that's going to keep coming. So this might help you kind of deal with it. Something else that might help, I'm going to talk you through a quick meditation. So if you'd like to take some time to maybe sit back and take a deep breath, we can try to de-stress together. And these are some things that when I'm having a moment of overwhelm, in the past week, I've done this to myself a couple of times. This is the thought process that I take in just a silent breathing exercise to myself. So I'll share it with you now. Just kind of get cozy. And if you want, you can close your eyes. I'm going to move closer. And just take a couple deep breaths, maybe getting tall, maybe just sinking comfortably into whatever position you're getting into. And imagining each part of your body is going to start relaxing, and we're going to start with the head. So maybe just trying to either sit up a little taller or just relax your head into the earth or into whatever it is that you can lean against. And I maybe should have been more specific with this meditation. This is like a relaxation, anti-stress, whatever you want to dissolve your stressful mind type meditation. And I'm just starting with the top of your head, imagining with each breath in, you're inviting the soothing air, and with each breath out, it's a release. Breathing in, relaxing your shoulders down away from your ears. Allowing for your eyes to relax and feel like you're squinting to just relax your eyes. Bring that relaxation to your jaw. Feel your jaw relax. Moving down to your arms. Feeling the weight of your arms relaxing as you let go of all of your muscle mass holding them. And as you keep taking deep breaths, feel your heartbeat slowing with it. As you lengthen your inhale, maybe relaxing your rib cages a little extra on this exhale. Moving down to your pelvis, feeling your pelvis relaxing. Letting your hips feel heavy on the surface that you're sitting on or laying on. Feeling fully supported by the earth holding you, the chair holding you, the ground holding you. And keep going all the way down your legs, relaxing the muscles, relaxing your feet, relaxing your hands. Once you feel like your entire body is completely relaxed, bring your attention back to your breath. Using your mind to focus on feeling like a feather. Imagining all of the weight lifting from your body. And just floating with it so softly, becoming less dense. Every breath in, I am. And every breath out, calm. Deep breath in, I am. Exhale, calm. I am calm. Inhaling in, I am. Exhaling, safe. Inhaling, I am. Exhaling, safe. Doing that as many times as you need to feel safe in this floating space. Reminding yourself that majority of the time we overcomplicate things. When we slow down to the present moment, it all comes down to our breath. Each breath in, feeling alive. Every breath out, exhaling. the stress of being alive. Go through so much every day. Sometimes it seems so small, and sometimes it seems so big. Just remember it's about your focus, honoring your thoughts as they come, choosing where to focus. Honoring you're not alone. We're all here living it together. So you might need to reach out to somebody, reach into yourself, knowing that what you're feeling is for a reason. To help you learn to experience things. And as you continue breathing and clearing your mind, focusing on the breath as things come and go. And landing in a neutral place in your mind. You are safe, you are supported, and you are guided. The moment will pass. You'll realize what it was trying to teach you. You'll realize happiness is found in the mind, but so is stress. So is discomfort. So choose where you want to land. Use humor to come out of the dark. And just gentle reminders that it can be so beautiful to witness all of it, the changes, the irony of life. When you're ready to come back, I invite you to wiggle your fingers and your toes. And opening your eyes when you're ready. Look back. If it's not going to hurt you right now, it's not something that needs to be focused on. Focus on the love. Focus on my goofy story. And just finding those sweet moments. Smiles with a friend, anything that you can hold on to that's good. That building those memories and building that safety in your mind will help so that when you feel overwhelmed, like I was saying, I need to get better at that recognition of where the thought cycle spirals and bringing myself back to those moments to learn what they're telling me, what they're telling us, and just respecting that humans, we're cyclic beings. So we're going to keep probably making those same types of things, and just hoping that as we learn from them, you might hit that moment of irony and realize it's a curveball being thrown at you. And maybe you'll start to see the curveballs from the pitcher coming at you, and you'll be better at hitting them away from you. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but thanks for being here. Appreciate you guys, and hopefully we'll speak with you soon. Sending love.